Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to the Hindu newspaper analysis for today. I hope by now all of you already are a part of our Telegram channel. If you have still not become a part of it, please click on the link given in the description of the video and you will become a part of our Telegram channel where you will get all the latest current affairs updates about the UPSC examination. Let's begin with the first article now, written by the former Vice President of India, Mr. Hamid Ansari. He has written this on the topic of cooperative federalism seen from the point of view of language. In very simple terms, I'm sure all of you know what is cooperative federalism. It's an idea that the central government must cooperate with the state governments, and the state governments also must cooperate amongst each other for a more unified country, for a country which is in everyone's interest. The author here is writing from the point of view of the imposition or the alleged imposition of Hindi language across the entire country. He says that after every few months, after every few years, the central government, irrespective of whichever government is in power, tries to start imposing Hindi on non-Hindi speaking states, which goes against the very idea of cooperative federalism. And he says that this must be looked into. He gives an example of the Indian constitution itself. He says that the idea of which should be the official language or whether we should have a national language or not was very widely debated in the Constituent Assembly. In the Constituent Assembly, it was decided that we should specifically write about the usage of the language in the country in part 17 of the Constitution from Articles 343 to 351. For example, Article 345 says that the state may choose its language for official purposes. He is giving these examples to show how the constitution makers themselves never wanted imposition of Hindi. For example, the state governments right now have their right to choose their official language and it doesn't have to be Hindi. Many of them, in fact, have chosen to go ahead with English as well, as you can see in many of the northeastern states of India. On the other hand, even if you look at the judiciary, the Supreme Court, the High Courts by default, all of them have been asked to have their proceedings in English language by default. Yes, Article 351 does say that the state must ensure development of Hindi across the entire country, but this does not really mean that Hindi has to be imposed on other states such as Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Wherever we have any news about Hindi imposition, we see a very strong reaction from non-Hindi speaking states, majorly led by Tamil Nadu. Now, the other reason why we are seeing all these critical reactions from non-Hindi speaking states is that the central government is not really adhering to the idea of cooperative federalism. For example, we all know that there is a committee on official languages which is supposed to be headed by the Home Minister. Now, this committee has 30 members. It's a unique committee in the sense that while all other parliamentary committees submit their report to the parliament and they discuss it, this committee actually submits the report to the President of India. And then the President of India will lay down the report in the parliament for discussion. But what has happened is in the past few years, especially ever since the BJP government has come to power, as per the author, these reports are not being sent to the parliament from the president. So what is happening is the committee is discussing the matter, submitting the report to the president, but the report does not then go to the next step in the parliament. Thus, it does not come out in the public domain. This is adding to the problem. If you just remember a few months back, this committee did submit the report and it was never made public, but it invited a lot of very critical reactions from Kerala and Tamil Nadu chief ministers. Specifically, the report had said that in all the central government education institutes, including IITs, IIMs, etc., as far as possible, Hindi should be used and English should only be used when it is absolutely necessary. This report was never made public by the government officially. Now, the author also says if the constitution makers really wanted Hindi to be spread all across the country, they might have written that in the directive principles of the state policy or fundamental duties. But it is never mentioned in either of these two. Neither does the directive principles say that the government of India has to make a law to impose Hindi or has to spread the use of Hindi. Neither do the fundamental duties of the constitution put any such duty on the citizens of India. Thus, the non-Hindi speaking population has as much right as the Hindi speaking population to use a language of their choice. And any effort by the government of India to impose that goes against the unity of India, the cooperative federalism, and also against the welfare of the entire country. Now, there have been multiple reports discussing the impact of changing the official language or the impact of trying to impose Hindi. In the past, there have been multiple committees formed on the idea of official language. Let me give you some of the examples. Now, there were two committees formed mainly by the government of India called the Pahwa Committee 1996 and Sitakant Mohapatra Committee of 2003. Now, the reason why these committees were formed was, if you look at the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution, which has 22 languages, in this schedule, which language would be included, there is no criteria on that specifically. That is why this committee was formed to actually give suggestions. Now, the sad part is, while the committee gave its report in 2004, it is still under discussion. Or, as you can say, it is almost as good as dead. So, the committees that have been formed by the government in the past to give suggestions on the idea of language, the different status of the languages in India, whether be it the classical languages, 8th schedule language, or the official language, many of these committees and their reports have never been accepted by the government. Also, the one compromise formula that has been adopted all across the country in some way or the other about which language should be used in education is a three language formula given by the Kothari Commission, also known as the first education policy of the country. They had actually suggested using three languages: Hindi, English, and one regional language in the Hindi speaking states, and Hindi, English, and the official regional language in other states of the country. So that children across the country would be in touch with Hindi and in English and some of the other regional languages. So that the government's idea of spreading Hindi as much as possible should be implemented. However, that did not really convert into law, and many of the states never had that. For example, in North India, hardly any of the schools actually allowed the students to learn some non-Hindi regional languages like Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada, etc. And similar was the pattern followed in the South India states as well. That is why this third language never actually came into existence. The next article that we have here talks about the EWS reservation. Now, as you know, recently the Supreme Court ended the question of EWS quota, saying that this is as per the constitution. The 50% limit is not really set in stone, it can be flexible, and also saying that those who are not covered under any other reservation benefits like SC, ST, OBC, they are the ones who should be covered under this quota. Now, the reason this article is written is they are actually solving the question whether this EWS quota of 10% is it based on certain data or not. Is it based on certain data that shows us that EWS category were not represented earlier, and that is why they needed the reservation? Because the authors here are saying that the one reason why reservation is valid in India is the government has to justify that this particular community was not represented earlier in the government jobs and education institutions, and that is why they need reservation benefits. The problem here is government never gave any data to support this claim that the EWS category is not well represented. So they are now trying to solve this riddle, that is whether EWS category people were earlier underrepresented before the quota, and has the situation changed after 2019 reservation was introduced. For doing this, they have compared data from 2019 and 2022 to see whether there has been an increase or decrease in the number of students belonging to the EWS quota in these institutions. The number says that in 2019, EWS students made about 19% of the NIRF ranked higher education institutes in the country, while 39% of the students were from SC, ST, and OBC. Now, the interesting part is, do understand this: SC, ST, OBC together make up 49.5% deserved seats. Remember, 15%, 7.5, and 27%. But even then, they formed only 39% of the quota. This is an interesting problem to see. Also, the EWS quota, rather than increasing after this reservation was implemented, number of EWS students actually declined from 19% to 15%. However, what they want to stress on is Even before the reservation of EWS came into the picture, the EWS category students were never underrepresented. They already had made up 19% of the students that took admission in these institutions. So that logic that they are underrepresented does not really hold true here. Even when you look at private institutions, that is the same. Even in private institutions, you will see students who now come under the category of EWS actually made up more than 10% of the seats even before that. Meaning that reserving these seats hardly had any benefit. Understand, you reserve the seats for a class of people who you know otherwise might not actually make it there. They are underrepresented, that is why you reserve the seats. But in case of EWS, that is people earning less than 8 lakh rupees per lakh, they already were represented enough in these institutions, so they did not really have any benefit from the EWS quota anyways. Thus, it is clear that the EWS quota is not really based on evidence, they are not underrepresented, and it would not have the intended benefits as the other reservation would have. Now, we have discussed earlier as well how the Supreme Court tackled the issue of the EWS quota, where they said that giving reservation just on the basis of economic backwardness is not against the constitution. They say that the basic structure of the constitution is not violated by this. On the other hand, the two judges who were in minority who opposed this said that reservation is a very, very powerful tool and it should only be used for that category of people who are underrepresented and who need support from the side of the government. Also, you must know how the idea of EWS reservation first originated. There was a commission formed in 2005 called S.R. Sinho Commission. S.R. Sinho was a major general retired from the army. Under his leadership, a committee was constituted in March 2005 to give a report on how to improve the situation of economically backward classes in the country. They submitted the report in 2010 and recommended that all the below poverty line families within the general category, as notified from time to time, should be identified as economically backward classes. Now, the interesting part here is, and many of the people who oppose the reservation say, this committee never talked about reservation benefits to EWS. What did they say? They just said that those who actually belong to financially weaker sections should be termed as economically backward classes, but they never said that reservation should be given to them. So, this is not really an idea given by this commission, and the government cannot really say that we are giving reservation based on this commission's recommendation, which the government has said time and time again. The next article that we have here is a very, very important statement made by the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud. So what has happened here is a PIL has been filed in the Supreme Court seeking that the number of judges in the High Court and in the District Judiciary should be doubled so that we can handle the pending cases in India. Supreme Court Chief Justice did not seem to agree with that. He said that it is already difficult to find good lawyers to come in the High Court and work as judges. He said that the reason why we have so many pending cases is not just because of the lower number of judges. It is because of a lot of different factors of how the judicial system is built. He said that when I was the Chief Justice of Allahabad High Court, at that time also there was a suggestion given that we should increase the number of judges by at least 25%. He said that he found it very difficult to even fill 160 seats in the Allahabad High Court, so he could not even think of increasing that by 25%. The Chief Justice of India said to the petitioner that this is a very, very simplistic way of looking at the problem, and the problem is not that easy to solve. The petitioner, on the other hand, said that if you look at the developed nations, in developed nations, you will see there are 50 judges for every 10 lakh people, and India should actually increase the number of judges. To this, the Chief Justice of India replied, see, I know the US and UK judicial system very well. Trust me, they would not have heard such a petition as I am hearing right now. So if we accept petitions such as yours, this is the reason why we have so many pending cases. If people stop filing these kind of petitions, and if the judges start ignoring them without even hearing them, we will automatically reduce the number of pending cases in the country. So don't just say it is because of the lower number of judges, it is because of a lot of different reasons. He also said that about 20% of the judicial posts in the high courts are vacant right now. Now, not just the Chief Justice of India, the other judges also in the bench. So the bench also had Justice Kaul, who is the second senior most judge in the Supreme Court after Chief Justice of India. He also disagreed with the suggestion. He also said that just increasing the number of judges will not resolve this issue. They also said that the government also has to take the blame because when the collegium sends any name to the President of India, the government takes a lot of time, many months to actually confirm that. Now, as you know, the recommendations of the collegium are binding on the president. So, if they have given a name for appointment to the President of India, that will not be ignored. However, the catch here is that there is no time limit within which the president has to appoint that judge, and this is where a lot of delay actually happens. When the governments do not really like the names of certain judges, they try to send them back, then the collegium will again send the same name, and this is how months and months are spent, and the judges come very near to their retirement age. So judges said that don't just ask these questions to judiciary, ask this to the government as well. Why is it that they're delaying the appointment of judges when the collegium has already given the name? Now, there are different ways to look at this problem. Yes, you would agree to the fact that just increasing the number of judges is a very simplistic solution that might not really work. But the fact still remains that the number of cases pending in the courts in India are increasing at a very fast pace. They are now close to 4.5 crore cases. You can get the updated data by a website called National Judicial Data Grid. All that you have to do is Google this National Judicial Data Grid and you can get the updated numbers. These are the numbers till March 2022. There is one other very interesting problem that people don't really notice. Many ex-Chief Justices of India have said that one of the biggest reasons why we have so many pending cases, especially in the higher judiciary, is because the government is one party to the case. What they mean to say is whenever there is a case against the government, let's say in the High Court, and the decision goes against the government, rather than accepting the decision and moving on, the governments almost always will file an appeal in the higher court. That is why the number of cases actually increase. If you look at the Supreme Court and the cases listed there, many of them that have come by the way of appeal, over half of them would have government as one of the parties. So a part of the blame of why is it that the higher judiciary is overloaded with the cases has to go to the government as well. Because no government wants to end up losing a case. For them, it is always a better option to delay the eventual outcome and let the next government handle it. So the Supreme Court has said that government being the biggest litigant is also a big issue that needs to be resolved. The next important article is that the UNDP, UN Development Program, has announced that they will be helping workers working in the field of waste segregation in India to move towards a formal economy and get access to government welfare programs. Now, what is happening is that the UN Under Secretary General is coming to India to launch this initiative. Under this, the UN is trying to distribute Jan Dhan account kits to as many waste segregation workers as possible. Now, as you know, Jan Dhan account kits would enable these workers to take advantage of welfare schemes from the government. Whenever the government has to transfer any subsidy directly into the accounts of these people, they can actually do that with the help of the Jan Dhan account. This is where they have come in. The UNDP says that they are trying to migrate these workers to formal economy so that they can earn better wages, they can contribute more to the economy, and they can also save money in the long run. As you know, waste management has always been a big problem in India because waste management can only be done if it is done at the source. So, for example, if you are the ones who are creating waste in your household, when you hand over the waste to the municipality, it is your responsibility to segregate wet waste and dry waste. Because when you segregate it at the source itself, where the waste is generated, that is when it becomes possible to process the waste perfectly fine. But that has not been happening, because of which the job of the waste segregation workers has increased. Most of the waste segregation workers are not permanent employees of the governments. Most of them are contractual laborers, meaning that even when they take a leave of one day, or if something wrong happens against them at work, they do not get any benefits. They don't get any pension, they don't get any other government benefits that others get. And that is why the idea is that these workers working in the field of waste segregation must be migrated towards formal economy as much as possible. As per the UNDP, 70% of waste segregation workers in India come from socially backward groups, and 60% have no formal education at all, making it very difficult for them to get any skilled job apart from this. More than 90% have Aadhaar card but do not really have any income, caste, or occupation certificate. So UNDP will take up this with the help of the Government of India's initiative. Now, UNDP, as you know, is a UN arm working specifically for the development of the developing nations and specifically those groups that are vulnerable within these nations. So they focus on the least developed nations, the developing countries, and promote technical and investment cooperation amongst the nations. This actually is a network of over 170 nations, and they have been given help by multiple funds, programs, specialized agencies, etc. UNDP has been working with India ever since India's independence on multiple issues, including providing sustainable livelihood, environment, literacy, etc. The Government of India is working with UNDP to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The two sides mainly collaborate on three areas: inclusive growth, environment and energy, and strengthening systems and institutions. For India, all the coordination with the UNDP is done by Department of Economic Affairs under the Finance Ministry of the Government of India. Apart from this, it's not just that the UNDP has taken certain efforts for the welfare of the waste segregation workers. The Government of India has also been doing a lot of things in order to improve their life and also in order to ensure that the waste segregation becomes easier in India. We also have been conducting the Swachh Sarvekshan, under which the citizens' participation is encouraged and different rankings are given to the cities based on their cleanliness. We also have the star rating of the garbage free cities that is given by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Swachhata Hi Seva campaign has also come up, under which a nationwide Shram Dan is organized. That means volunteering to be a part of the cleanliness services. We also have massive cleanliness drives at iconic spots organized by the government. Then the government is also giving encouragement to manufacturing of compost using the organic waste that is developed across the household. So Compost Banao, Compost Apnao campaign has also been run by the Government of India. The next article is also related to the waste generation, but it is mostly got to do with how is it that India is handling its waste. Do we have enough landfill sites or not? Now, as you know, it's a very, very infamous and unfortunate scene that in Delhi there are many landfill sites that have now become mountains. So the word landfill doesn't even apply to them. Landfill means filling up the land with the different waste. But if this is the land and the waste is now up till this level, this is not a landfill anymore. These are actually mountains of waste that have developed on the outskirts of Delhi. Now, recently a report has come out by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation called NV Stats India 2022 that talks about the challenges related to solid waste generated across the country and how we don't have enough capacity to actually process that waste. Report specifically focuses on Delhi and says that Delhi generates over 40 lakh tons of municipal solid waste. Then we also have 13 lakh tons of construction and demolition waste and 11,000 tons of biomedical waste in 2020-21. While half of the municipal solid waste went to the landfills, the other half was recycled and reused. 35% of the biomedical waste was incinerated. Incinerated means put on fire. And entire construction and demolition waste was recycled. Now, these numbers are very, very, very low. If half of the solid waste generated was recycled, means the other half is going in these landfills, and that is why these mountains are going higher and higher and higher. There have even been reports of these mountains destabilizing, falling over some people, and actually taking their lives. Such has been the seriousness of this issue. Now, the problem is not just in Delhi but across the country. 68% of municipal solid waste generated in India is processed. Means about one third of the waste that we are producing is not even processed. States such as Himachal and Chhattisgarh are doing very well, while in West Bengal, only 9% of their solid waste that they produce is actually getting recycled, which is a very, very serious condition. This is a table that shows how the different states are performing in terms of how much percentage of their solid waste that they generate actually is being processed. West Bengal here you can see only 9%. Similarly, Arunachal Pradesh only 24%. The states that are doing pretty well include Himachal Pradesh, then we have Madhya Pradesh, we have Chhattisgarh, we have Gujarat, Maharashtra, Odisha. These are the ones who are also working well. Then BMW means the biomedical waste is processed in larger numbers in other states, but here also there are some states that are lagging behind. When it comes to hazardous waste, including the ones that have certain kind of chemicals, again we do not have the capacity to process these. This is where the government has to spend a lot more money to invest in good high quality infrastructure. This again is a table of how exactly is this waste recycled or processed in terms of municipal waste, biomedical waste, hazardous waste, etc. Now, Indian government did introduce a solid waste management rules in 2016 to improve the situation, making it the responsibility of the generators of the waste, that is you, me, if we are generating it in a household, or the companies, to segregate the waste into wet, dry and domestic hazardous waste before we hand it over to the waste collection agency. Also, we have to pay the user fee, that is a fee for those who are collecting the waste, and we might also have to pay a fine if we don't segregate it properly. Sanitary waste such as diapers, sanitary pads, etc. have to be secured in the pouches given by the manufacturers or the brand owners themselves before being handed over. Then disposal products such as glass, tin, plastics, etc. also have to be processed properly through the financial assistance to local authorities and to the waste management system by the companies themselves. These are the important articles from the Hindu newspaper today. Now, a couple of practice questions. Number one, overflowing landfill sites in various parts of the country point towards a failure of waste management policy. Do you agree? Elaborate. Second, the huge pendency of cases in the Indian courts can't just be solved by increasing the number of judges. Critically analyze. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a good day ahead.